Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really close look at the journey of Donald Trump. I mean, a figure who's gone from real estate to reality TV and, well, all the way to the presidency.
Yeah, it's quite a path. We've got this detailed narrative that covers, pretty much his whole life.
Right. And our mission, really, is to unpack that narrative, pull out the key moments, the influences, and try to understand how he got from point A to point B and C.
Exactly. It takes us from his childhood right through to what he's doing now post-presidency. It covers the business ups and downs that shift into politics, the White House years.
And the aftermath. There's definitely a lot there.
For sure. We want to get the bigger picture from this source material.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. Donald John Trump, born in Queens, New York City, June 1946.
Fourth of five kids. And his father, Fred Trump, he was already pretty successful real estate guy.
Yeah, but focused on middle-class housing, not the big Manhattan stuff yet.
Yep.
Mostly outer boroughs.
Right, so the environment was definitely real estate, construction, business, right from the start.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? The source points out the contrast. His dad had this steady, maybe safer approach.
Whereas Donald, even early on, it sounds like he had his eye on something. Well, flashier, higher stakes, Manhattan.
Yeah, that ambition seems to have been there early. The narrative describes him as energetic, confident, outspoken.
So much so that his parents sent him off to military school, New York Military Academy at 13.
Apparently for discipline, yeah. But it wasn't just that. He actually did well there. Academically, athletically.
That military academy stint feels kind of significant, doesn't it? Maybe it instilled some drive or showed he could thrive in that sort of structured, competitive place.
Could be. Then college for him first, but then he transferred to Wharton, University of Pennsylvania.
Right, the famous business school, graduated 68, economics degree. So clearly focused on business, on finance.
And even during Wharton, he was already involved in his father's company, Elizabeth Trump and Son.
But Manhattan was calling, he wasn't content with just the outer boroughs.
That's a big leap, though. Manhattan real estate is a different game entirely. Much riskier.
Absolutely. And that really flags a key thing about him, doesn't it? Taking big risks for potentially huge rewards. So in the 70s, he takes over the family business.
Renames it the Trump Organization.
Yep. And makes that move. Shifts the focus squarely onto Manhattan. Totally different strategy from his father's steady Eddie approach.
And did it pay off early? What was the first big splash?
Well, the source highlights the Commodore Hotel redevelopment near Grand Central.
Ah, right. That was struggling, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he saw potential. Cut a deal, brought in Hyatt, and turned it into the Grand Hyatt Hotel. That really established him. It showed he could play in the big leagues.
That deal was huge for his reputation in Manhattan.
Definitely pivotal. Showed he could handle complex deals, had vision. But then came Trump Tower.
Okay, the Trump Tower, Fifth Avenue.
Exactly. That 58-story skyscraper, that became the ultimate symbol. Luxury apartments, fancy shops.
His own apartment in there, too, apparently quite opulent.
Oh, yeah. It just screamed ambition, success, maybe a certain kind of flashiness. It put his name literally on the skyline.
So by the 80s, he's not just a developer anymore. He's becoming, famous.
A celebrity, yeah. The Art of the Deal comes out, huge bestseller. He's all over the media, at parties, events.
He clearly understood branding and public attention even back then.
Without a doubt. The 80s were his time, really. Symbol of wealth, luxury, that whole greed is good era, sort of.
And he expanded rapidly during that time.
Hugely. Hotels, casinos, Atlantic City was big for him. Trump Plaza, Trump's Castle, the Taj Mahal.
He even had an airline for a while, right? Trump Shuttle?
Yep. It seemed like nonstop expansion. Everything he touched turned to gold, or seemed to.
But, the narrative mentions the early 90s. Things change.
They did, big time. The U.S. economy hits a rough patch, real estate market tanks.
And those casinos, They were heavily leveraged. Lots of debt.
Exactly. Suddenly, they're in deep financial trouble. We're talking billions in debt, according to the source.
Wow. So 1991 sounds like a crisis point.
Absolutely critical. His whole empire was teetering. He had to negotiate hard with the banks just to avoid personal bankruptcy.
Had to sell assets.
Yeah, the yacht, the airline, gone. And several of his properties, like the Taj Mahal, actually filed for bankruptcy.
That must have really damaged his image as the ultimate winner.
It definitely took a hit. Magazines were questioning if he was finished.
But the source suggests he didn't just fold, he fought back.
Seems like it. Hard work, tougher negotiations, maybe smarter ones this time, focused on saving the core business.
Restructuring deals, finding new investors.
Exactly. And slowly he started to climb back. Mid to late 90s, he's back focusing on Manhattan real estate.
And this is where the branding becomes even more central, right? Licensing the name.
Precisely. He realized the power of the Trump name itself. Hotels, golf courses, apartment towers. Sometimes he didn't even own them, but his name was on them. A symbol of luxury, ambition. It was smart branding.
Then comes another twist. The early 2000s. Reality TV.
The Apprentice, yeah, 2004. That was kind of out of left field, but it was massive.
It really did change his public persona again, didn't it? You're fired.
Totally. It made him this decisive boardroom figure in the eyes of millions who maybe didn't follow real estate. It boosted the brand incredibly. He could sell anything with the Trump name on it after that.
So by the late 2000s, he's kind of completed this big comeback.
You could say that. Businesses were profitable again. The brand was stronger than ever. Global recognition. He was back. But, as the source notes, the most unexpected move was still to come.
Politics.
Right. I mean, he'd always sort of flirted with it, commented on the economy, trade, taxes, talked about running before.
But June 2015, he actually does it. Comes down the escalator at Trump Tower, announces he's running for president.
A moment a lot of people initially, they didn't take it very seriously, did they, given his lack of political background?
But he framed that as a plus, didn't he? The outsider, the businessman who could fix things.
Yeah, make America great again. That slogan resonated. And he zeroed in on issues like immigration, trade, jobs, using very blunt, direct language.
Criticizing opponents, the media.
Right.
It wasn't a typical campaign.
Not at all. The constant Twitter use, bypassing traditional media filters, those huge rallies, way more than standard speeches. It was direct, unfiltered communication with his base. Very unorthodox.
And it worked, at least in the primaries. He beat a whole field of experienced Republican politicians.
Yeah, secured the nomination by mid-2016. Then it was him against Hillary Clinton.
The ultimate insider versus the ultimate outsider, in a way.
Pretty much. And again, lots of predictions favored Clinton. But Trump kept holding these massive rallies, pushing that anti-establishment message, drain the swamp.
And then November 8th, 2016, the surprise victory.
A huge surprise to many. January 20th, 2017, he's inaugurated. 45th president, promising a whole new vision.
So the presidency itself. The source says he started fast. Executive orders.
Right away. Trying to enact campaign promises quickly. Immigration orders, including the travel ban, border security, deregulation.
The travel ban caused a lot of controversy and legal fights, didn't it?
Immense protests, court challenges immediately. Immigration remained a central and contentious focus.
What about the economy?
The big thing was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in late 2017. Major tax cuts aimed at stimulating business.
And the source notes there was economic growth, low unemployment in those first 3 years.
It does note that, yeah. But it also points out that this period saw, deepening political and social divides in the country.
His communication style didn't change much as president, did it? Still very direct, often via Twitter.
If anything, it intensified. Daily tweets, praising supporters, attacking critics, calling news he didn't like fake news, using those nicknames for opponents. It was unprecedented, really.
And foreign policy. America first.
That was the theme. Meetings with world leaders, including Kim Jong-un, over North Korea's nuclear program, though the results there were pretty mixed.
And pulling out of international agreements.
Yeah, the Paris Climate Accord, the Iran nuclear deal. He favored bilateral deals and wasn't shy about challenging existing alliances or trade rules, especially with China.
Then 2020 hits, and everything changes with COVID-19.
Yeah, the pandemic dominated his last year in office. The administration's response, those daily briefings. The source mentions criticisms about confusing messaging, sometimes conflicting with what health experts were saying.
That summer also saw huge social unrest after George Floyd's killing.
Widespread protests for racial justice. Trump's response emphasized law and order, sometimes deploying federal agents to cities, which was also really controversial.
Leading into the 2020 election against Joe Biden. Very different circumstances with the pandemic.
Massively different. Huge increase in mail-in voting. Biden wins the election.
But Trump didn't concede.
No. He immediately claimed widespread fraud without providing substantial evidence, according to the source. Launched dozens of lawsuits.
None of which succeeded in changing the outcome.
Right. And this whole period built towards January 6, 2021.
That rally in D.C., where he told supporters to fight like hell.
And then the march to the Capitol, the breach, the violence while Congress was certifying the results. A really shocking day for the country.
Congress did eventually certify Biden's win.
Yes. And on January 20th, 2021, Trump left the White House. Didn't attend Biden's inauguration, which broke a very long-standing tradition.
But leaving office didn't mean leaving the stage. Not at all.
Far from it. Mar-a-Lago became his base. He stayed very involved, very vocal, still a major force in the Republican Party, holding rallies, making endorsements.
But he's also faced a lot of legal issues since leaving office.
A whole raft of them. Investigations, lawsuits related to the 2020 election interference claims, his business practices, January 6th.
He was impeached again after January 6th.
For a second time, yes, for incitement of insurrection. Again, acquitted by the Senate, but still historic.
And then the criminal indictments started coming.
Yeah, that's unprecedented territory for a former president. Charges related to classified documents kept at Mar-a-Lago, attempts to overturn the Georgia election results. Several different cases.
And his response and his supporters has generally been
to frame it all as politically motivated, witch hunts. That's been the consistent narrative from his camp.
Despite all that, he announced he's running again for 2024.
He did, back in November 2022, and almost immediately became the front runner for the Republican nomination, holding rallies, maintaining that strong base.
He also launched his own social media platform, Truth Social.
Right, after being banned from Twitter and Facebook post-January 6th, it gives him that direct channel back to his followers.
The source calls him a highly divisive figure, which seems accurate. Intense support, intense opposition.
Definitely no middle ground for most people when it comes to Trump, and early 2024 saw him frequently in courtrooms.
While campaigning, that's just wild. A former president juggling court dates and campaign rallies?
Utterly unprecedented. And his campaign message for 2024 seems to be about finishing the job he started, hitting familiar themes, immigration, the economy, railing against the deep state.
So looking back at this whole narrative, the source essentially concludes he's been a transformative figure. For better or worse, he's changed things.
Yeah, I think that's undeniable. A symbol of disruption, change, anger for some, hope for others. He's left a massive mark on America.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've gone through this incredible story. Real estate mogul, TV star, president, post-president. It's a unique blend of business skill, media instincts, and, well, political disruption.
Absolutely. And it's had a profound impact on American society, that's clear.
You know, something that really stands out from the source is that recurring theme you mentioned earlier. Risk and ambition. It's always there.
It really is. From betting big on Manhattan to the casinos to that long shot run for president, it's a constant thread. High risk, high reward, always pushing boundaries.
Yeah. That's a fascinating takeaway. It makes you think, doesn't it? About what that tells us about challenging norms, going after goals that seem almost impossible, whether it's business or politics or anything, really.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Given his continued powerful influence and the really deep divisions his career has highlighted, what does the enduring presence of Donald Trump tell us about how leadership is changing?
Or about the relationship between celebrity, power, and public opinion now in the 21st century.
Exactly. It's a complex picture, and his story certainly gives us a lot to consider about where things stand today.